The cellar beneath the wooden fortress stank of mold, unwashed bodies, and despair. Red Hawk sat against the cold stone wall, iron shackles biting into his wrists and ankles, chains bolted to heavy rings embedded in the floor. 3 days had passed since the so-called Knights of the Prairie had ambushed him while he hunted alone far from his village. They called themselves protectors of civilization, defenders of settlers against savage threats. But Red Hawk had quickly learned they were nothing more than criminals hiding behind righteous words and stolen authority. The cellar was dark except for thin strips of light that filtered through gaps in the floorboards above. Red Hawk could hear boots stomping overhead, crude laughter, the clink of bottles. The knights spent their evenings drinking and boasting about their exploits, each story more exaggerated than the last. Red Hawk had heard them arguing about what to do with him. Some wanted to hang him publicly as a warning. Others wanted to ransom him to the army. And a few simply wanted him dead and buried, where no one would find the body. But what haunted Red Hawk most was not his own fate. It was the sound he heard every morning before dawn, the shuffling of small feet, the rattle of chains even lighter than his own, and occasionally the muffled sound of crying quickly stifled. Someone else was imprisoned down here, someone young and terrified. For 2 days, Red Hawk had called out in English, trying to make contact, but received no response. Then on the 3rd morning, when the cellar was still wrapped in pre-dawn darkness, a small voice finally whispered back, "Are you real?" The voice asked, trembling with uncertainty. "Or are you another trick? They like to play tricks on me." Red Hawk's heart clenched at the fear and exhaustion in that child's voice. "I am real," he answered gently. "My name is Red Hawk. I am Lakota. I have been captured by the men who call themselves knights." "Who are you, little one? How long have you been here?" There was a long silence, then the sound of chains dragging across stone as the speaker moved closer to where Red Hawk's voice had come from. "My name is Molly," the child said, her voice barely audible. "I've been here so long I can't remember when I came. My parents died of fever on the wagon train west. The knights found me and said they would take care of me until relatives could be located. But there are no relatives, and they don't take care of me. They make me work, cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, hauling water from the well. When I'm too slow or make mistakes, they—" Her voice trailed off, but Red Hawk understood what she couldn't say. As Red Hawk's eyes adjusted to the darkness, he could finally make out Molly's shape in the far corner of the cellar. She was painfully thin, a small shadow barely visible in the gloom. Chains connected her ankle to the wall, giving her just enough length to reach a bucket in the corner and a pile of filthy rags that served as her bed. Her dress was torn and dirty, her hair matted and tangled. Even in the darkness, Red Hawk could see bruises on her arms and face. The sight filled him with a rage so intense he had to force himself to remain calm for the child's sake. "Molly, listen to me carefully," Red Hawk said, keeping his voice steady and reassuring. "What they are doing to you is wrong. You are not their property. You are a human being who deserves kindness and freedom. I'm going to help you escape from this place." Molly made a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so bitter. "You're chained up just like me. How can you help anyone when you can't even help yourself? Besides, even if we could get free, where would we go? They'd hunt us down. They always find people who try to run." Red Hawk examined his chains carefully, running his fingers along the iron links, testing their strength and looking for weaknesses. The manacles were old but sturdy, locked with heavy padlocks. However, the bolts securing the chains to the floor were another matter. They had been driven into soft limestone that had been worn down by moisture and time. "I have been in worse situations and survived," he told Molly with quiet confidence. "My people have learned to be resourceful, to find ways where others see only walls. But I need your help. Can you move close enough to reach me?" Molly's chains scraped against stone as she pulled herself across the cellar floor toward Red Hawk. When she was finally close enough, Red Hawk could see her more clearly in the dim light. She was perhaps 10 years old, with tangled blonde hair and blue eyes that had seen far too much suffering. Her small hands were calloused and scarred from hard labor, her feet bare and cut. But there was something in her eyes that had not been broken, a spark of defiance, of stubborn survival, that reminded Red Hawk of his own daughter back in the village. "In my boot, there is a small bone needle I use for mending leather," Red Hawk explained. "The knights did not find it when they searched me, because it is sewn into the inside seam. If you can reach my boot and retrieve it, I may be able to pick these locks. It will take time and patience, but it is possible. Can you do this? Molly nodded eagerly, the first sign of hope Red Hawk had seen from her. She stretched her small arm toward his leg, her chains pulling tight, fingers straining to reach the worn leather of his boot. After several attempts, Molly's nimble fingers found the seam and located the thin bone needle carefully hidden there. She worked it free with the skill of a child who had learned to make her hands useful for survival. When she finally held the needle up triumphantly, Red Hawk smiled, the first genuine smile he had managed since his capture. Well done, little warrior. Now we must work quickly but quietly. The knights will not come down here until midday, when they force you to go up and work. We have perhaps 4 hours. That should be enough. Red Hawk took the bone needle and began working on his manacle locks with the patient skill of someone who understood that haste would only waste time. The locks were simple but required precision. As he worked, he kept talking to Molly in a low, calm voice, asking her questions about the fortress layout, the knights' routines, where horses were kept, where supplies were stored. Molly answered between nervous glances at the ceiling, clearly terrified that someone would come down and discover what they were doing. "There are 12 knights," Molly whispered. "Their leader is called Captain Thornton, but he's not a real captain. Someone told me he was discharged from the army for stealing. They keep the horses in a stable on the east side of the building. There's always at least 2 men on watch, but they drink a lot, especially at night. The rest sleep in the main hall upstairs. They keep weapons everywhere, rifles, pistols, knives, and they have dogs, 3 big mean ones that bite." As Molly provided this intelligence, Red Hawk felt the first lock mechanism give way with a soft click. His right hand was free. He flexed his fingers, working circulation back into his wrist, then immediately began working on the left manacle. "You are very observant, Molly. You have the mind of a scout, noticing details others might miss. That skill will serve you well in life, once you are free of this place. Tell me, do you know where they keep the keys to your chains? Or do we need to pick that lock as well?" Molly's face fell slightly. "The keys hang on a hook near the cellar door, but that door is always locked from the outside, and the key for that lock stays with Captain Thornton. He keeps it on a leather cord around his neck, even when he sleeps. I've thought about trying to steal it 100 times, but I could never figure out how without waking him. And even if I did get free, I don't know how to survive out there on the prairie. I don't know which plants are safe to eat, how to find water, how to tell which direction to go. I'd probably die before I made it to the next town." Red Hawk's second manacle clicked open. Both hands were now free, though the leg irons remained. He stretched his arms, rolled his shoulders, feeling strength return to muscles that had been locked in one position for days. "That is why we will escape together, little one. I know this land. I can read signs in the earth and sky that would be invisible to you. I can find water where settlers see only dry ground. I can hunt and track and move without being seen. And you have knowledge I do not. You know these knights, their weaknesses, their routines. Together, we are stronger than either of us alone. Do you understand?" Before Molly could answer, they heard heavy footsteps on the stairs leading down to the cellar. Both froze. Red Hawk quickly positioned his hands behind his back, as if still chained, the open manacles hanging loosely on his wrists. Molly scrambled back to her corner, trying to look as hopeless and defeated as before. The cellar door swung open with a loud creak, and yellow lantern light flooded in, painful after so long in darkness. A large silhouette filled the doorway, one of the knights, a bearded man who went by the name Dutch, carrying a bucket of water and a small piece of dry bread. Dutch descended the stairs with heavy boots, setting the bucket down roughly so water sloshed over the sides. He tossed the bread toward Molly without ceremony, watching it land in the dirt. "Eat up, girl. Captain wants you upstairs in 10 minutes. Got a whole pile of shirts that need mending, and if you're slow about it, you'll regret it." His eyes shifted to Red Hawk, studying him with cruel amusement. "As for you, Savage, the captain's decided what to do with you. Tomorrow morning, we're taking you to Fort Riley. There's a bounty on Lakota warriors, and we could use the money. Enjoy your last night breathing Kansas air." Dutch turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Red Hawk with a nasty grin. "Of course, accidents happen on the trail. Prisoners try to escape, force us to defend ourselves. Be a shame if you never made it to the fort alive. But that depends on how cooperative you are." He laughed at his own implied threat and climbed back up the stairs, taking the lantern with him. The cellar door slammed shut, and the lock turned with a heavy click. Darkness and silence returned, broken only by the sound of Molly's frightened breathing. "We have to leave tonight," Red Hawk said urgently, abandoning all pretense now. He quickly worked on his ankle shackles, his fingers moving with practiced speed. "If they take me away tomorrow, I cannot help you, and you will be trapped here forever. We must act now while we still can. When they come to get you in a few minutes, you must go upstairs and work as you always do. Give them no reason to suspect anything has changed. When night comes and they are drunk and sleeping, that is when we make our move. I will free myself completely, then come for you. Are you brave enough to do this?" Molly's voice was small but determined. "I'm scared, but I'm more scared of staying here forever. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I trust you, Red Hawk. You're the first person who's been kind to me in so long I can't remember." Red Hawk's ankle shackles clicked open, just as footsteps sounded on the stairs again. He quickly repositioned himself, making it appear he was still bound. Dutch appeared again, grabbing Molly roughly by the arm and dragging her toward the stairs. "Come on, you lazy girl." "Work time." As Molly was pulled away, she looked back at Red Hawk one last time. In the brief moment before the door closed again, their eyes met. No words were spoken, but a promise passed between them. Tonight everything would change. Tonight they would both be free, or they would die trying. Either way, the cruelty of the Knights of the Prairie would end for at least one captive child. Red Hawk settled back against the wall, now truly free of his chains but maintaining the appearance of captivity. All he had to do now was wait for nightfall and the opportunity it would bring. Night fell over the Kansas prairie like a heavy blanket, bringing with it the blessed cover of darkness that Red Hawk had been waiting for. Above him, the sounds of the night's revelry had reached their peak hours ago, and were now fading into the drunken snores and occasional muttering of men who had consumed too much whiskey. Red Hawk had counted the footsteps, memorized the patterns of movement, and listened carefully to every word spoken. He knew that most of the knights were now sprawled across the main hall, sleeping off their excess, while only 2 remained on watch, and even they sounded less than alert. Red Hawk silently removed the manacles completely and set them down without a sound. His body ached from days of confinement, but he forced himself to move slowly, methodically, allowing his muscles to warm up and regain their flexibility. He approached the cellar door with the patience of a hunter stalking prey, testing each floorboard before putting his full weight on it, avoiding the ones that creaked. The door was locked from the outside, but it was old wood, and the frame had warped over years of Kansas weather, harsh winters, humid summers, and constant wind. Using his bone needle and a small piece of metal, he had worked free from his chains. Red Hawk began working on the lock from the inside. It was more difficult than the manacles had been, requiring him to work blind, feeling for the mechanism through the keyhole. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool night air. Above him, he could hear one of the guards walking past, boots heavy on the wooden floor. Red Hawk froze, barely breathing, until the footsteps moved away. Then he returned to his delicate work, his sensitive fingers reading the lock's interior, like a language only he could understand. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, Red Hawk felt the lock mechanism shift and give way. The door was now unlocked, but opening it would be the most dangerous moment. Hinges might creak, floorboards might groan, and he would be exposed at the top of the stairs, with nowhere to hide if someone spotted him. He eased the door open a fraction of an inch at a time, pausing after each tiny movement to listen for any change in the sounds above. When the opening was finally wide enough, he slipped through like smoke, staying low and moving with the fluid silence that had made him one of his tribe's most skilled scouts. The main hall was dimly lit by a dying fire in the stone hearth. Bodies were scattered everywhere, knights sleeping in chairs, sprawled on tables, or lying on the floor wrapped in blankets. The air reeked of alcohol, unwashed men, and wood smoke. Red Hawk's eyes quickly located the 2 guards, one sitting by the front door, his head nodding forward in sleep, despite his supposed vigilance, and another visible through a window, walking a lazy patrol around the exterior of the building. Neither was particularly alert, which was exactly what Red Hawk had hoped for. He moved through the shadows like a ghost, his moccasined feet making no sound on the wooden floor. His destination was a small alcove near the back of the hall, where Molly had told him the knights kept their extra supplies. More importantly, it was where Molly herself was forced to sleep, chained to a heavy beam close enough to the kitchen that she could be roused at any hour to serve her captors. Red Hawk found her exactly where she had described, curled up on a thin blanket, her small body rising and falling with the rhythm of exhausted sleep. Red Hawk knelt beside her and gently placed his hand over her mouth before whispering directly into her ear. "Molly, it is Red Hawk. Do not make a sound. I am here to free you." The girl's eyes flew open, wide with shock and fear, but she recognized him and nodded quickly. Red Hawk removed his hand and examined the chain on her ankle. The lock was similar to the ones he had already defeated, and his fingers made quick work of it. Within minutes, Molly was free, rubbing her ankle where the iron had left red marks and calluses from months of constant wear. "We need weapons, food, and horses," Red Hawk whispered. "Can you show me where they keep these things without waking anyone?" Molly nodded and pointed toward different areas of the fortress. The weapons were kept in a locked cabinet near the captain's quarters. Food stores were in a pantry off the kitchen, and the stable was accessible through a side door. Red Hawk considered their options carefully. Attempting to steal weapons would be risky. The cabinet was close to where Captain Thornton slept, and any noise might wake him. But leaving without any means of defense would be equally dangerous. Red Hawk made his decision. They would take food and water first, then go for the horses. If an opportunity presented itself to acquire weapons, he would take it, but he would not risk Molly's freedom for it. He was a warrior. He could craft weapons from natural materials if necessary, could defend them with his bare hands if it came to that. The most important thing was getting Molly far away from this place before dawn broke and their escape was discovered. Every minute counted now. They crept to the pantry, and Molly, familiar with every inch of the space, quickly gathered dried meat, hardtack, a small sack of cornmeal, and 2 water skins. Red Hawk also took a length of rope, a flint and steel for making fire, and a small cooking pot. These items went into a canvas bag that Molly carried over her shoulder. As they moved toward the side door that led to the stable, Red Hawk noticed something that made him pause. A rifle leaning against the wall near the sleeping guard by the front door. Its owner too drunk to care about securing his weapon properly. Red Hawk weighed the risk and decided it was worth taking. He moved with impossible slowness toward the sleeping guard, each step calculated and precise. The man's snoring was loud and regular, a good sign that he was deeply asleep. Red Hawk's hand closed around the rifle's stock, and he lifted it with agonizing care, ensuring it made no sound against the wall or floor. The guard snorted and shifted slightly, and Red Hawk froze, becoming as still as stone. After a moment, the snoring resumed its regular rhythm. Red Hawk backed away with the rifle, returning to where Molly waited, her small fist pressed against her mouth to keep from making any sound. They slipped out the side door into the cool Kansas night. The stars were brilliant overhead, providing just enough light to see by once their eyes adjusted. The stable was a simple structure about 30 yards from the main building, and the 3 guard dogs were chained near it. This was the obstacle Red Hawk had been most concerned about. Dogs had senses far sharper than humans, and if they barked or growled, the entire plan would collapse. Red Hawk knelt and whispered to Molly, "Stay here. Do not move until I signal you. Trust me." Red Hawk approached the dogs slowly, staying downwind so his scent would not reach them immediately. When he was close enough, he began speaking to them in a low, calm voice, using the soothing tones that worked with animals regardless of language. The dogs, expecting rough treatment from the knights, were surprised by this gentle approach. Red Hawk extended his hand slowly, letting them catch his scent, showing no fear or aggression. One by one, the dogs relaxed, their tails beginning to wag tentatively. Red Hawk produced small pieces of dried meat from his pocket, taken from the pantry supplies, and offered them to the animals. They accepted eagerly, and just like that, potential enemies became allies. With the dogs neutralized, Red Hawk signaled Molly forward. They entered the stable together, where 6 horses stood in their stalls, dozing peacefully. Red Hawk selected 2, a sturdy roan mare that looked strong and reliable, and a smaller paint horse that would be easier for Molly to handle. He worked quickly but carefully, fitting them with bridles and saddles, checking every strap and buckle to ensure nothing would fail during their flight. Molly watched in fascination, having never been this close to the horses before, despite living among men who depended on them. Red Hawk lifted Molly onto the paint horse, adjusting the stirrups as high as they would go so her short legs could reach. "Hold the reins like this," he instructed softly, showing her the proper grip. "The horse will follow mine, but if we become separated, give her gentle pressure with your heels, and she will go forward. Pull gently back to stop. Most importantly, stay low against her neck if we must run fast. It will help you keep your balance. Do you understand?" Molly nodded, her face a mixture of terror and exhilaration. She was actually doing this. She was actually escaping. Red Hawk mounted the roan mare, the stolen rifle secured across his back, along with their supply bag. He guided his horse toward the stable door, Molly's paint following obediently. They moved out into the night, and for a moment Red Hawk thought they might actually make it away clean. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. As they passed the corner of the main building, heading toward the open prairie, one of the knights stumbled out of a side door, clearly needing to relieve himself after a night of heavy drinking. The knight, a young man called Peters, stopped dead in his tracks, his alcohol-fogged brain taking a moment to process what he was seeing: a Lakota warrior on horseback, the orphan girl who should have been chained inside. Both of them clearly attempting to escape. For one frozen heartbeat, no one moved. Then Peters opened his mouth to shout an alarm. Red Hawk reacted instantly, urging his horse forward and swinging the rifle like a club. The wooden stock connected with Peter's head with a sickening thud, and the knight crumpled to the ground unconscious before he could make a sound, but the damage was done. The sound of the impact in the knight's body hitting the ground had been loud enough to wake others. Red Hawk heard confused voices from inside the building, the sounds of men stirring, someone shouting questions. "Ride," Red Hawk commanded Molly urgently. "Ride as fast as you can. Follow me and do not look back." He kicked his mare into a gallop, and Molly's paint, trained to follow the lead horse, leaped forward as well. Behind them, the knights of the prairie were waking to the reality of their escape, and the night erupted with shouts of anger and alarm. Captain Thornton burst from the main door, barefoot and disheveled, but moving with the deadly purpose of a man who had just discovered his authority had been defied. "They're escaping!" he roared. "Get the horses. Get weapons. I want them brought back alive, especially the girl. She's my property, and no savage is going to steal what's mine. Move, you useless dogs." The fortress exploded with activity as knights scrambled for weapons, boots, and horses, their drunkenness falling away in the face of fury and humiliation. Red Hawk and Molly rode hard across the dark prairie, the wind whipping past them, grass hissing beneath the horses' hooves. Molly clung to her horse's mane, terrified but determined, her small body pressed low as Red Hawk had instructed. Behind them, they could hear the thunder of pursuing horses, the shouts of angry men, and occasional rifle shots fired wildly into the darkness. The bullets went wide, shooting accurately from... Horseback at night was nearly impossible, but they served to remind Red Hawk and Molly that their pursuers were deadly serious about recapturing them. Red Hawk guided them southeast, toward broken terrain he had observed during his brief time at the fortress. If they could reach the rocky hills before dawn, they would have places to hide, opportunities to set ambushes, and advantages that would offset the knights' superior numbers and firepower. The prairie seemed endless in the darkness, but Red Hawk navigated by stars and instinct, his internal compass honed by a lifetime of travel across lands that looked identical to untrained eyes, but were full of subtle landmarks to those who knew how to read them. "Are you still with me, Molly?" Red Hawk called over the thunder of hooves. "Yes," the girl shouted back, her voice small but fierce. "I'm scared, but I won't fall. I won't let them catch me again." Red Hawk felt a surge of pride for this brave child who had endured so much and still found the courage to fight for her freedom. "Good. We are going to make it, little warrior. Just hold on and trust your horse. She knows what to do." Behind them, the pursuit continued, relentless and filled with rage. The knights of the prairie had tasted humiliation, and they wanted revenge. Dawn broke across the Kansas prairie with cruel beauty, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed to mock the desperation of the chase. Red Hawk and Molly had been riding for hours, their horses lathered with sweat and breathing hard. They had reached the rocky hills Red Hawk had been aiming for, a landscape of broken stone, narrow canyons, and scattered vegetation that offered the cover they desperately needed. Behind them, perhaps a mile back but closing the distance, rode 8 knights led by the furious Captain Thornton. Red Hawk guided them into a narrow canyon with high walls, dismounting quickly and helping Molly down from her exhausted horse. "We cannot outrun them anymore," he told her honestly. "The horses need rest, and so do we. But here, in this terrain, their numbers mean less. They will have to come at us carefully, and that gives us advantage." He found a defensible position where the canyon narrowed to a bottleneck with rocks that would provide cover. It was not perfect, but it was the best they could hope for given the circumstances. Molly's face was pale with exhaustion and fear, but she stood straight, refusing to collapse despite having ridden harder and longer than she ever had in her young life. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the terror she must have felt. Red Hawk checked the stolen rifle, counting the rounds. Only 4 bullets remained, not enough to hold off 8 determined men for long. "Now we use the land against them, and we use their anger against them. Angry men make mistakes. Patient warriors exploit those mistakes." The sound of approaching horses echoed through the canyon. Captain Thornton's voice rang out, magnified by the stone walls. "Red Hawk, we know you're in there. There's no way out except the way you came in, and we've got it blocked. Send the girl out now, and maybe we'll let you die quick instead of slow. That's more mercy than you deserve for stealing my property." The venom in his voice was palpable, the rage of a man whose authority had been challenged and found wanting. Red Hawk cupped his hands and called back, his voice calm and strong. "The child is not property. She is a human being who deserves freedom and dignity. What you did to her was evil, keeping her in chains, working her like a slave. I will not let you take her back to that life. You will have to kill me first, and I promise you, some of you will die trying." His words echoed through the canyon, and for a moment there was silence. Then Thornton's bitter laughter rang out, cold and cruel. "Noble words from a savage, but you're outnumbered and outgunned. You've got 1 rifle with maybe a few rounds left. We've got 8 men with plenty of ammunition. This isn't about honor or right and wrong, this is about power, and we've got it. You're just delaying the inevitable." Thornton paused, then his voice took on a more calculating tone. "But I'm a reasonable man. Here's my offer. You walk out with your hands up, face justice for your crimes, and I'll go easy on the girl. Keep her in the cellar for a while to teach her a lesson, but no permanent harm. Refuse, and when we come in there, and we will, she'll suffer for every minute you made us wait." Red Hawk looked at Molly, who stood beside him with clenched fists, her blue eyes blazing with an anger that transcended her years of captivity. "Don't listen to him," she said fiercely. "He's a liar. He'll hurt both of us no matter what you do. I'd rather die free out here than go back to those chains. Please, Red Hawk, don't give up, not now, not when we're so close." Her courage, so pure and unshakable, made Red Hawk's decision easy. They would fight and they would win or die together. "Your offer is refused, Thornton," Red Hawk shouted back. "Come and take us if you can. But know this, I am Lakota, trained since childhood in the ways of war. This canyon will become your grave if you are foolish enough to enter." He heard the knights conferring among themselves, argument and uncertainty in their voices. Good. They were already doubting their leader, already questioning whether revenge was worth dying for. Red Hawk needed to widen that crack in their unity, to make them think twice about following Thornton's orders. Thornton, sensing his men's hesitation, tried to rally them with bravado. "He's bluffing! 1 warrior with 4 bullets against 8 of us? Those are odds I'll take any day. Dutch Peters, you 2 go in from the left side. Jackson and Miller, take the right. The rest of you spread out and provide covering fire. We'll flush them out like the rats they are." But there was uncertainty now in some of the knights' movements, a reluctance that had not been there before. They had signed up to bully settlers and profit from vigilante justice, not to storm a defended position against a skilled warrior. Red Hawk whispered quickly to Molly, "When the fighting starts, you stay behind these rocks no matter what. Keep your head down, cover your ears against the gunfire, and do not move until I tell you it is safe. If something happens to me if I fall, you wait until dark. Then take my horse and ride east. Follow the North Star at night, the sun by day. 3 days of steady riding will bring you to Fort Harker. Tell them everything that happened. The army may not love the Lakota, But they hate vigilantes who operate outside the law even more. They will help you. Promise me you will do this. Molly's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I promise. But you're not going to fall. You're going to win, and we're going to ride out of here together, and we're going to be free. That's what's going to happen. Her faith, so absolute and innocent, gave Red Hawk strength. He smiled at her, then turned his attention to the canyon entrance, where the first knights were beginning their cautious advance, using rocks for cover, rifles ready, moving with the careful precision of men who knew they were exposed. Red Hawk let them come, patient as stone, waiting for the perfect moment. When 4 of the knights had committed to entering the canyon, spreading out as Thornton had ordered, Red Hawk made his move. His first shot took Dutch in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his rifle clattering across the rocks. His second shot struck Peter's rifle, smashing it to pieces and sending splinters of wood into his face. The knight screamed and fell back, clutching his bleeding cheek. 2 shots, 2 knights disabled, and the remaining men suddenly realized this was not going to be the easy victory Thornton had promised. The canyon erupted with gunfire as the knights returned fire, bullets ricocheting off stone, filling the air with deadly whining sounds and rock chips. Molly screamed and curled into a ball behind the protective rocks, her hands over her ears, just as Red Hawk had instructed. Red Hawk stayed low, conserving his remaining 2 bullets, watching and waiting. The knights were firing wildly now, wasting ammunition, their shots poorly aimed and driven by fear rather than tactical thinking. This was exactly what Red Hawk had hoped for, panic breaking their discipline. Captain Thornton, watching from a safer position outside the canyon, realized his plan was falling apart. "Fall back," he shouted. "Regroup. We need a different approach." The knights retreated quickly, dragging their wounded companions with them, leaving a trail of blood on the canyon floor. Red Hawk had won the first engagement without killing anyone, something he preferred, as he took no pleasure in death, even of enemies. But he knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Thornton would not give up easily, and the captain still had numbers and ammunition on his side. During the lull in fighting, Red Hawk heard something unexpected, voices arguing outside the canyon, growing louder and more heated. He could not make out all the words, but the tone was clear. Some of the knights were questioning whether this pursuit was worth the cost. They had signed up for easy profit and intimidation, not a pitched battle against a skilled warrior who was making them pay in blood for every foot of ground. The seeds of doubt Red Hawk had planted were growing, and Thornton's authority was fracturing. "This is insane, Captain," one voice shouted. Jackson, if Red Hawk remembered correctly. "Dutch is bleeding bad, Peters might lose his eye, and that savage still has bullets left. For what? One orphan girl who ate our scraps and mended our shirts. She's not worth dying for. I say we cut our losses and head back." Other voices murmured agreement, and Thornton's response was a roar of rage. "You cowards! You yellow-bellied cowards! Fine! Run away like dogs with your tails between your legs. But I'm not leaving. I'm not letting some savage make a fool of me. I'm going in there myself if I have to." Red Hawk heard the sounds of horses departing. Several of the knights had apparently decided that discretion was indeed the better part of valor, and were abandoning their captain. But Thornton and at least 2 loyalists remained, and their determination would be even more dangerous now that they had nothing left to lose. Red Hawk checked his rifle. 2 bullets remained. He would need to make them count. He also gathered several fist-sized rocks, primitive weapons but effective at close range. If it came to hand-to-hand combat, he was confident in his skills. Thornton's voice, now stripped of its false bravado and revealing the ugly desperation beneath, called out one final time. "Red Hawk, your luck's run out. My men might have abandoned me, but that just means I don't have to share the satisfaction of killing you. And when I'm done with you, I'm going to take that girl back, and I'm going to make sure she remembers this day for the rest of her miserable life. You hear me? You've made everything worse for her. You should have left her in chains where she belonged." The words were calculated to provoke Red Hawk, to make him angry and careless. But Red Hawk had learned long ago to master his emotions in battle. Anger made warriors stupid, and stupid warriors died. Instead, he felt only cold calculation and unwavering purpose. Thornton would not touch Molly again. Red Hawk would make absolutely certain of that, even if it cost him everything. He positioned himself carefully, rifle ready, watching the canyon entrance with the focused intensity of a hawk watching a prairie dog's burrow. Thornton came in fast and reckless, flanked by his two remaining men, all three firing as they advanced in a desperate frontal assault. Red Hawk's third bullet caught one of the loyalists in the leg, dropping him instantly. His fourth and final bullet struck Thornton's rifle, tearing it from his hands. Now Red Hawk was out of ammunition, but so was his tactical disadvantage. He dropped the useless rifle and picked up his throwing rocks, his arm cocking back with practiced precision. The first rock struck the second loyalist in the temple, and the man went down like a felled tree. That left only Thornton, now weaponless but still coming, his face twisted with rage and hatred, drawing a large knife from his belt. "I don't need a gun to gut a savage," he snarled, advancing with the knife held low and dangerous. Red Hawk met him calmly, his own small bone knife in hand, his body settling into the fighting stance taught to him by his father and grandfather before him. They circled each other in the confined space, two men who represented different worlds, different values, about to settle their conflict in the oldest way humans knew. Thornton lunged first, his knife slashing in a wide arc meant to disembowel. Red Hawk sidestepped easily, his years of training making him far more skilled in close combat than the vigilante captain. Red Hawk's counter was swift and precise, not lethal but disabling. His blade cut across Thornton's knife hand, forcing him to drop the weapon with a cry of pain and rage. Before Thornton could recover, Red Hawk swept his legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the rocky ground. In an instant, Red Hawk was on top of him, knee on his chest, bone knife at his throat. "It is over, Thornton," Red Hawk said quietly, his breathing barely elevated despite the fight. "Your men have abandoned you. You are defeated. I could kill you now. It would be justice for what you did to Molly and others like her. But I am not like you. I do not kill helplessly because I can. I kill only when necessary for survival or protection. So I offer you a choice. Swear before whatever god you believe in that you will leave this territory, that you will disband your false knights, that you will never again harm children or claim authority you have not earned. Swear this and you live. Refuse and you die here in this canyon, forgotten and unmourned." Thornton's face went through a rapid series of expressions: rage, humiliation, fear, and finally, the bitter acceptance of defeat. "I swear," he gasped out, the knife point at his throat leaving him no room for defiance. "I swear I'll leave Kansas, disband the Knights, never come back. Just let me live." Red Hawk studied his eyes, reading the truth or falsehood in them, with the skill of one who had survived by understanding men. What he saw was not honor or genuine reformation, but the pragmatic surrender of a bully who had finally met someone stronger. It would have to be enough. Red Hawk stood, removing his knee from Thornton's chest and stepping back, though he kept the knife ready in case of treachery. "Go," he commanded. "Take your wounded and leave this place. If I ever hear of you harming the innocent again, I will find you, and next time there will be no mercy. Now go before I change my mind." Thornton scrambled to his feet, clutching his bleeding hand, and stumbled toward the canyon entrance. He gathered his wounded men, and together they limped away, a pathetic remnant of the force that had entered with such confidence. Red Hawk watched until they were out of sight, then turned to where Molly still crouched behind the rocks. "It is over, little one. We are safe. You are free." Molly emerged slowly, as if unable to believe it was true, her eyes wide and disbelieving. When she saw Red Hawk standing unharmed, saw the empty canyon where their enemies had been, something broke loose inside her. She ran to him and wrapped her small arms around his waist, sobbing not from fear now, but from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming realization that her nightmare had finally ended. Red Hawk knelt and held her, letting her cry out months of pain and terror and hopelessness. "You were so brave," he told her gently, "braver than many warriors I have known. You survived when others would have given up. You trusted when you had every reason to fear. You're a true warrior of the prairie, Molly, and you should be proud." Molly looked up at him through her tears. "What happens now? Where do I go? I have no family, no home. Will you just leave me somewhere and go back to your people?" Red Hawk had been thinking about this question throughout the long night's ride. He had a wife and daughter waiting for him, a village that would welcome him back. But he also had this orphaned child who had no one, who had shown such courage, and deserved so much better than what life had given her. The decision, when it came, felt both difficult and inevitable. "I will take you to Fort Harker," he said. "There is a missionary there, a woman named Sarah Blackwell. I have heard she is kind and takes in children who have nowhere else to go. She will care for you, teach you, help you build a new life. And I will visit you when I can, bring you gifts from my people, make sure you are well. You will not be alone, Molly, I promise you this." They rode east together as the morning sun climbed higher, warming the Kansas prairie. The horses, rested from the brief respite, carried them steadily toward Fort Harker and the new beginning that waited there. As they rode, Red Hawk told Molly stories of his people, of the buffalo herds that once covered the plains like a living carpet, of the seasonal migrations and sacred ceremonies, of his daughter who was close to Molly's age, and who he hoped might one day meet her and become her friend. Molly listened hungrily to these stories, her face transforming as she absorbed this vision of a world so different from the cruelty she had known. 3 days later, they arrived at Fort Harker. Sarah Blackwell, the missionary Red Hawk had spoken of, was exactly as he had hoped, a gentle woman with kind eyes and capable hands, who took one look at Molly's condition and immediately swept her into a warm embrace. "You poor child," she murmured. "You're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." She looked at Red Hawk with questions in her eyes, and he told her everything: the captivity, the chains, the escape, the battle in the canyon. Sarah's face darkened with anger at the treatment Molly had endured, but she nodded with understanding and respect for Red Hawk's actions. "You saved her life," Sarah said simply. "Most men would have thought only of their own survival. You chose differently, and this child has a future because of you. I will care for her as if she were my own daughter. She will be educated, clothed, fed, and most importantly, loved. You have my word." Red Hawk felt the tension he had been carrying for days finally release. Molly would be safe here, would have the childhood she deserved. But when he turned to say goodbye, Molly grabbed his hand desperately. "Will you really come back? Will you visit like you promised? Or will I never see you again?" Red Hawk knelt before her one final time, taking both her small hands in his weathered ones. "I will come back, little warrior. This I swear on my honor and on the spirits of my ancestors. When the seasons change and I pass near this place, I will visit. I will bring you gifts and stories. And when you are grown and strong, if you wish to meet my daughter and learn the ways of my people, you will always be welcome in our village. You are part of my family now, Molly. Distance cannot change that. The bond we forged in darkness and danger is stronger than blood. Do you believe me?" Molly searched his face, seeing the truth in his eyes, and slowly nodded. "I believe you. Thank you, Red Hawk. Thank you for being the first person in so long who was kind to me, who protected me, who saw me as a person instead of property. I will never forget you. Never." She hugged him fiercely one last time, then stepped back, standing straight and brave beside Sarah Blackwell. Red Hawk mounted his horse, taking one last look at the small blonde girl, who had shown him that courage came in all sizes, and that honor meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. As Red Hawk rode away from Fort Harker, heading back toward his village and the family that awaited him, he reflected on the strange journey that had begun with his capture and ended with his understanding of a profound truth. The world was changing. The old ways of clear boundaries between peoples, of ancient enmities and tribal loyalties, were giving way to something more complex. In that complexity, there was both danger and opportunity. He had saved one child, made one small difference. Perhaps it was not much in the grand scheme of history, but for Molly it was everything. And sometimes everything began with one person choosing compassion over convenience, courage over caution. Years later, the story would be told around both Lakota campfires and settler hearths, the tale of the captive warrior who saved an orphan girl from her chains, and how the knights who sought revenge found only defeat and disgrace. Some versions emphasized Red Hawk's combat skills, others focused on Molly's bravery, and still others spoke of the missionary who gave a broken child a new beginning. But all versions agreed on one thing. In a time and place defined by violence and division, two people from different worlds had found common humanity, and in that finding, they had both been saved. Red Hawk kept his promise. Every year when his travels brought him near Fort Harker, he visited Molly. He watched her grow from a traumatized child into a confident young woman, educated and strong, who never forgot where she came from or who had saved her. She learned to read and write, studied medicine under Sarah's guidance, and eventually became a teacher herself, helping other orphaned children find hope and purpose. And when she was 20 years old, Molly made the journey to Red Hawk's village, meeting his daughter and learning the ways of the Lakota people, becoming a bridge between cultures just as Red Hawk had once been a bridge for her. The Knights of the Prairie disbanded, their leader Thornton keeping his forced promise and disappearing into obscurity. Some of the former knights were eventually arrested for their crimes and faced real justice. Others simply faded away, their brief moment of bullying power ending as quickly as it had begun. The cellar where Molly had been chained was eventually torn down, the evil place erased from the Kansas landscape. But the story lived on, a reminder that even in the darkest times, individual choices mattered, that one person's courage could change everything, and that the bonds formed in shared struggle could transcend all the barriers that society tried to build between people. And so the tale ended, not with revenge or tragedy, but with hope. Hope that the future might be different than the past, that kindness might prove stronger than cruelty, and that a captive warrior and an orphaned girl, brought together by chance and bound by courage, might show the way forward for all who had the wisdom to follow their example. The Kansas prairie wind carried their story across the plains, and the story, like the best stories, became truth. Not because every detail was perfectly factual, but because it revealed something essential about what it meant to be human, to be brave, and to choose love over hate, even when hatred seemed easier and safer. The sun set over the endless prairie, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. And somewhere out there, a warrior rode home to his family while a young girl, no longer orphaned or chained, learned to build a new life surrounded by love and possibility. And that, in the end, was the best revenge of all. Not violence returned for violence, but freedom claimed, dignity restored, and futures rewritten by those brave enough to believe that change was possible. The chains were broken, the knights defeated, and two souls set free to write their own stories on the vast canvas of the American frontier.